What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Divine Journey 2. In the last episode, we polished off the Draconic Evolution chapter, unlocking chapter 26, and this chapter is all about chemistry, which is first going to require us to put together a fair number of ingredients, the most expensive being this chaotic core to make an evaporator. And the way this thing works is pretty simple, but we're going to need to figure out where to expand our base for all this alchemistry stuff, which is easier said than done because our base is growing a ridiculous amount. Alright, so after a fair amount of consideration here, I think what we're going to do is we're going to kind of extend this wall down here. And we can tuck like all of our one block machines into this wall somehow. And then we can have a little staircase coming up, going over into this next chunk. And in this chunk we can build our various different multi-blocks for this mod. Alright, I think something like this area should work. This room is probably a little small for the multi-blocks, but I think we can kind of tuck them back into this wall a little bit. And then these areas are also a little small for things like our evaporator and whatnot. So I don't know. We're going to have to maybe expand it. It really just depends how this ends up playing out. I've only ever really played with alchemistry on a very small scale, so we're just going to have to play it by ear. One thing I know for certain though is that we're going to need to automate mineral salts from this evaporator. So we're going to have a drawer for that. And I'm thinking we even do things kind of right and left like this. Then we need an unending bowl, and we'll send the water into there and pull the items out into this drawer. Here we go. I got it all connected up, and these things are pretty slow. So we may end up having to make more than one evaporator, but there's 3 mineral salts. And how many do we need for the quest? 8. So I'm going to be waiting here for a little bit. Not too terribly long though. Oh, nice. We get 32 awakened draconium from that. And what's our next step? Alchemical machine frame, which means we need to make a crystal core and a steel singularity. So I guess we do need to take a step back into this previous chapter, and we're going to need to pick up the quantum compressor with the singularification catalyst, as well as some of this packaged auto stuff. So let's start off by setting up another layer of inscribers. This is actually going to be the very last set of inscribers we have to make the scheduling processors. And these actually used awakened draconium, which is why I was trying to put it off, but I guess we need it. But for now, we're just going to set it up in the same process as we've had to get scheduling processors. And we get 4 more from the quest. Now the only thing is I don't want to buffer too many of these. So probably once we hit about 32 in the drawer, I'm going to go shut off the extract. And that's just because we don't have a whole lot of awakened draconium to go around. Once we get seeds, this won't be much of an issue. The next step is going to be to encode a recipe for this packaging component. And we're going to need 4 of these for the quest. So let's go ahead and request those. 10 free draconic cores. I'll take that. And what do we got next? Okay, so this is where it splits off and we can actually like really get started with this stuff. So before we do that, I'd like to go ahead and craft this quantum compressor, which really doesn't look all that bad, and the singularification catalyst, which also isn't too bad. We already have everything we need for the singularification catalyst, so we can grab that out real quick. And then these materials, we should have 90% of this on request, so I'm going to request it and then I'll be back with you for the craft. However, the advanced compressors we don't have, but I think it's going to be worthwhile to go ahead and do this. So we'll need a recipe for the compressor, a recipe for the electric compressor, and a recipe for the advanced compressor. Then when we request those, it's going to send all the items to this small storage crate, which we will then take and make all into compressors, throw those back in the ME system. It'll make them into electric compressors and give us even more items so that we can upgrade them to the advanced compressors. And that should be the last ingredient, but this is an elite craft, to make our quantum compressor. We can go ahead and claim our 48 heavy duty plates as a reward. And I'm thinking now it is time to do another base expansion. And I think this is going to be pretty simple. We're just going to extend out here and have a little room here, which we can move all of these different crafting things into. And we'll also be able to set up our future things like packaged auto, quantum compressors, things of that nature in that room. All right. I got us cleaned up. I've also gone ahead and crafted this extended processing pattern terminal. So we have 16 slots in here rather than the regular 9 in this pattern terminal. That's going to come in handy when encoding some of these recipes. And you'll notice these chests are kind of bugging out. I was hoping, and actually I can't open these. I'll have to move these probably up a block. But I was hoping that whenever we put the patterns in here, it'll send the items in here and then we'll be able to see when there's actually items. And I've separated out into 3 different ones, so I stopped getting confused about which extended craft is for which table. But let me go ahead and move these up a block. Yeah, there we go. Now we can access all of our items. And the resonator that was over there, I've actually gone ahead and moved over here and turned it into a passive process. This is literally the only thing that we didn't have passive in the resonator anyway. And we use these fairly often. I don't know why I spent so long batch crafting them, but we have upgrade bases now. And I was thinking back here on this back wall, we can have a drawer controller down here. We're not going to bother connecting that up just yet. And then we'll have a bunch of drawers. And this is where we can store all of our items that we want to be able to use the creative vending upgrade on once we get it. And that's really mainly going to be like really expensive items in the creative chapter. But we'll go ahead and extend this drawer wall out quite a bit. Actually, we'll just fill up this whole wall with drawers. And looking at it now, it really doesn't feel like there's as much room as it felt like there was to begin with. But we're going to try to make it work. So I think we're going to tuck like our quantum compressor and things like that up against this wall, as well as our packaged auto stuff can probably go in like these corners. But it's really just going to depend how much it expands. Oh, okay. Well, I guess we don't even actually need packaged auto to be able to do the quantum compressor stuff, because we can just set 512 of different things, and we should be able to put more than one slot of each of these in here too. So yeah, we can just do these with regular patterns. As long as it doesn't use more than 16 unique items, we should be good. I've also taken the time to just add an elevator and extend out this room down here so we can easily access anything we need to with interfaces. So now we just need to actually get this quantum compressor set up. I think we can put it here, and the singularification catalyst needs to go in this slot. And we can put the, as long as it's not a sided machine, I don't think it is. And let's go back to here. The alchemical machine frame, we needed a steel singularity. So we're going to make a pattern and we're going to set 2 different slots for steel. And we're going to increase all of those, or I guess both of those, either way you want to look at it, all the way up to 512. That way it's going to be 1024 items total. And we'll set the output as a steel singularity and grab that pattern. Okay, and I just asked about it on the Divine Journey 2 Discord, and the problem is that this quantum compressor can't accept more than 64 items every second. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to bring the cable up the backside. We will have our interface above pointing downward. That's going to point into a drawer that is not locked. That way it can place any item inside. And then we'll put a variable card in export all items. And we're going to need to change this to 20 ticks per operation. And we can hook up our power from underneath. And we'll run item conduits up the side so that we can extract the item out here and insert back into the interface here. All right, let's see if we can request one of these now. Okay. Yep, we're getting a stack every second. And now we have our very first steel singularity. I wonder if that was a quest. Doesn't look like it. But either way, this thing's pretty cool. And I actually want to try this again because I set it down to 10 ticks midway through and it worked fine. So if I set it to 5, does it still work? Yeah, it's working on 5. Okay, so if I set it just to 1 tick, does it work that way? Yeah, it works that way. So it's not that this thing is limited to 1 stack per second. It's just that it can't have all of them go in at one time. And I'm not too sure what's causing issues with this thing, but we got it working now. And we got 3 steel singularities. So following that, we're going to want to input a recipe for the alchemical machine frame in our laser focus. And I don't have the mineral salts hooked up to the drawer yet. Chaotic cores we have a recipe for. Awakened draconium blocks we have a recipe for. Although this really needs a compacting drawer because right now our awakened draconium is just kind of floating around in the system. And then we're going to have to make the crystal cores manually until we unlock this recipe. And the crystal cores require a rock crystal with at least 300 size and a purity of 75%. So it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to go ahead and get a couple of these high purity ones growing so we can keep duplicating them. Then to go along with that, we're going to need 2 crystalline, 2 condensed vitreous, and 4 titanium boxes. We can request all of that up pretty easily. And I think this needs to be done in a regular crafting table, but we got our crystal core now. And if we throw that along with some mineral salts, we should be able to request up our first alchemical machine frame. Ooh, and we get an alchemistry guidebook. That's going to come in handy. So our first machine we're going to need to make with this is a chemical dissolver. And I'm assuming we're going to need multiple of these as this mod goes on. So we're going to go ahead and set up recipes for all of this stuff. And we'll request up one of those, which completed a quest for us and also gave us another trophy. So we'll get that down. And the quest recommends that if we want to make more of these, or I really just think it's a good idea in general to go ahead and work towards more chaos shards. So we need to look at the top of the quest line for growing chaos here. And that requires all of these ones surrounding it. So let's go ahead and set up our chemical dissolver over here. And we'll give it a power cell on the back to give it energy. This thing holds 2 billion RF. Okay, well, if that's the case, then we're going to connect up our conduits down here. And we can access all sides of the power cell. All right, now let's just pick one of these things and get started. I guess we can break down some beam cores first. And we'll just start off with 10 of these. That's going to give us nickel chloride and polyvinyl chloride. And we get 6 more beam cores as a reward. So let's go ahead and process these through as well. What else do we got here? We can't go to mercury, but we can get some mercury. Break down supremium ingots. And I guess we'll start off with 10 of those as well. Oh, that's giving us a whole lot of different stuff. Yeah, that gave us a ridiculous amount of stuff. We got lead, tin, mercury sulfide, silver, and that's it. And what we actually need for the quest is mercury sulfide and mercury, which is broken down from mercury sulfide. And we also get sulfur as a byproduct. 16 supremium ingots as a quest reward. We'll just hold on to those for now. We got a lot of that stuff from the 16 we had. Next up, we need mesquite, and it says to break down void metal or any base impetus item. But we got void metal seeds, so we'll use that. And let's see, what all does this give us? Iron oxide, iron, mesquite, and a lot more iron. 32 greed runes as a quest reward. Not too bad. All right, next up is titanium oxide. Titanium does yield titanium elements. You can only get titanium oxide from compressed titanium or titanium boxes. The boxes reliably yield more, not just with a 50% chance. So let's process 10 of those as well. That's giving us titanium oxide and titanium. 20 compressed titanium as a reward. And the next one is lead iodide and iodine. So I'm assuming we make lead iodine from evil infused iron, or I guess I'm not assuming. I didn't actually read this yet, but we make it from evil infused iron, then we break it down again for iodine. Well, we have this stuff on passive now, so let's just process a whole stack of it. Let's see what's next. Copper chloride. We need crystalline ingots or crystalline ingots to get some copper chloride. Well, we have a backlog of 8,000 crystalline, so let's just do a couple stacks of this. And that gives us copper chloride and potassium chloride. After completing all of those, we have access to the Growing Chaos quest. So this needs titanium oxide and mesquite, and then liquid iodine is our fluid input in the liquid crafter. And the liquid iodine is going to come from nickel chloride and impure mercury iodine mixture. And that's going to come from iodine, mercury, and copper chloride. Well, it sounds to me like we're going to need to make a couple more liquid crafters. So let's start requesting these things up. And actually, we only need 2 more because we have 1 empty one right now. Alright, we got our 2 additional liquid crafters. Went ahead and extended the room out and made room underneath for us to work in. We're not going to automate this just yet, we're just going to do a couple batches. So this first one's going to need iodine, mercury, and copper chloride. Once that finishes processing, we should have mercury, and we should have impure mercury iodine mixture. The mercury we're just going to extract out into a black hole tank, since this isn't really needed for anything until we get the atomizer, and then we can make mercury from it. But that might not even be the best way to go out making mercury. I guess an infinite loop would help the system run though. Then the impure we're going to extract out into an ender tank, which we'll set to triple gray, I think. Yeah, that's not storing anything at the moment. And we're going to send that into the next liquid crafter. Okay, and we do have at least 500 millibuckets in here. We're going to need that for the craft. And then on our input, we're going to throw in nickel chloride. And that's going to give us 2 outputs. An item output of pulverized nickel, which we're probably just going to send to a trash can. And then a liquid output of liquid iodine, which we're going to send to another ender tank. And let's see, are we using black yet? Doesn't look like it. Okay, so that's going to be perfect. And we'll send that into the next liquid crafter. And in our item input, we're going to throw in titanium oxide and mesquite. Should see that start processing, actually very quickly too. And we're getting our tiny chaos fragments. We can take these, throw them in our ME system. And I believe it's 9 of them to craft into small chaos fragments. And then another 9 to craft into the large ones. And then 9 more of those in order to make the chaos shards, which we need for the chaotic cores. But now we at least have access to infinite chaos shards, even if we don't have it automated yet. Oh, and the quest actually wants us to grab a bucket of liquid iodine. I guess we'll just pick that up later. It's not like that's going to be hard to do. We can just grab it next time we go to do this. And since we're already working up here, I think we're just going to kind of start from the top and work our way down, because there's way too many quests to just start picking what we want. So next we're going to need to process luminescence through our dissolver. That's going to give us urea and hydrogen. Oh, and potassium chloride. Then we'll throw this urea back in here to break it down into carbon, oxygen, and amide. Next we're going to want to process crystallized mana clusters to get ammonium. Following that, we'll need refined corallium for iron oxide, iron. The primary thing is psyllium. And it looks like that's all we get. And we'll also need hybrid abyssalium. That's also going to give us psyllium, but it's also going to give us this potassium permanganate, which we need for the quest. Sure, I'm glad we set this nether star farm up early, because now we're going to need a stack of these for hydroxylapatite, mendelevium, and it looks like that's all we get. And if we process this hydroxylapatite back in here, we'll get hydroxide, phosphate, and calcium. And it looks like methane is about to become an issue for us once again, because we have 0. But at least this time it's not because of the hydrogen. We actually have plenty of that. It's because we're out of crystallized carbon. So to make this process a little bit faster, we can replace the coal with blocks of coal. Oh yeah, now we're starting to backlog on methane. But just to be safe, let's add 3 more crystallizers to our new setup over here. So now back to what we were doing. Let's process some crystallized methane through here to get methane. Then we need to process some meteoric iron through here, specifically for, I think it's the calcium carbonate. And that actually unlocks this next quest, which is another modular machines multiblock. And a lot of this stuff we already have recipes for, but we do still need the mechanism heat input, the heat collector, the casting table, seared bricks, casting basin, seared drain, seared faucet, the resistive heater, and the fuel wood heater. And I knew this was coming, but I thought I'd at least be able to get this multi-block done. But our very last pattern, we don't have any slots in our interfaces for. And I think this room would be a good spot to set up some more. We already have some grid power stuff in here, but at this point, all we need is these dragon egg mills. So we can get rid of all of this and probably set up another 64 set interface towers. Well, I wasn't able to fit a full 64 in here, but we got 30 extra, all with max acceleration cards. So now we should be able to make our machine blueprint and start requesting up the rest of these materials. Oh, and this thing requires a ludicrous energy input hatch. Now, we haven't made chaotic energy cores or crystal matrix ingots yet, so we'll go ahead and grab a recipe for this, but we're going to have to figure these things out. So for the chaotic energy cores, we're going to need to set a recipe for those, as well as the draconic energy core, and we already have wyvern. And I feel sure this draconic energy core is a quest, so let's go ahead and request up one of those. And it is a quest, but we need 2 of them for the quest, so I guess we can request 1 more. That gives us 4 wyvern energy cores as a reward, so those are pretty nice. Back to what we were doing. We need to set a recipe in this crafter for diamond lattice. Then we'll send those into an alloy smelter with nether stars, and that'll give us our crystal matrix ingots, which means we should now be able to request our ludicrous. We're missing large chaos fragments. But we can craft those down from chaos shards, and then request our ludicrous. Alright, I got all the pieces of the puzzle together. Now we just have to actually put it together. But this room didn't turn out quite how I expected it to. Well, I mean, it turned out how I expected to. I built it. But these machines are going to be more abundant than I thought. I thought we were just going to have the 2 multi-blocks from alchemistry, but we also have this multi-block from modular machines. And I imagine we're going to need more of these things. So this may get a little bit more complicated. All right, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to build this thing here. And then we can add elevators in here and just expand vertically as needed. All right, we got the multi-block built and we have our energy input here. I think I'm going to push this wall back 1 block. All right, I actually pushed the wall back 2 blocks because that will keep it as an odd number room. So we have odd numbers and even walls and stuff. And I went ahead and hooked up power. Now we're going to need to distribute heat to all of these mechanism heat inputs. And I'm hoping that we can power this from a power cell below it. Is that powering it? It is not. So I'm guessing the power cell needs to go on the green dot. Looks like that works. Then we can transfer the heat from there with these mechanism thermodynamic conductors. And we'll just set this at like 5,000 RF a tick so it can easily generate the amount of heat that it needs. And I think this setup should be complete. We do get 20 reinforced machine casings as a reward. Make sure we claim that. And the next quest here is blocked off by these. So I think we're going to go ahead and pick up all 6 of these quests here. So to start off with, we're going to melt some rainbow tablets. We're looking to get... I forgot that I set this up so that it would automatically pull into the ME system. So we're getting a number of different things from this, but the one for the quest is chromium. Next, we're going to need to melt some crystalline. From that, we're looking to pick up barium sulfate. And in a second, we're going to need to throw that back in here. But another part of this quest is melting down wyvern cores to get the Hans purple. Both of which, when you throw them back in here, should give you barium. Oh, nice. We get 12 wyvern cores as a reward. That's really lucky. Okay, so next up, we need to break down some N-steel first to get antimony trioxide, and then we'll break that down again to get the antimony. Oh, and this is where things start getting expensive. To get this, we need to break down one of our impetus items. So I think we'll use impetus jewels. We already had a few of these in the ME system. That'll give us the strontium carbonate, which we're then going to need to break down again to get strontium. Oh, nice. We get 4 impetus cells as a reward. I feel like we should probably just go ahead and process these through here as well. Next up, we need to break down some flying ointment. We'll just do a whole stack of this stuff. And we're looking to get this cadmium sulfide out of that. Maybe a stack of flying ointment was a bit much. We already have 4,000 of this stuff and it's still going. It's not even halfway done. All right. Now that that's done, we need to break down some of this cadmium sulfide to get cadmium. 4 flying ointment as a reward. That's nothing compared to what I put in. Now this next one, it wants us to break down rainbow tablets. It says plates, but I'm pretty sure it's talking about tablets since that's the quest reward, to get arsenic sulfide. But we already broke down 32 rainbow tablets, so we can just grab the arsenic sulfide out, and then we're going to process back through to get arsenic. And that completes that whole little section and opens up 2 more quests for us. We have this one here for corrupted cores, or I said 2, 4 more. And then we have chromium barium compound, antimony strontium compound, and cadmium arsenic compound. So let's start at the top and work our way down. First, we're going to need to process some barium through this multiblock to get barium ingots. Oh wow. And these things actually take a full stack. No, they take 16 per ingot. So you don't get much from this. But now that we have those, we can set up a recipe for corrupted cores. And this is going to go to the advanced crafting table. Oh, sweet. We get 6k Arctic cores from that. That's crazy. That's a really good reward. Okay. So we got that one done. Let's move on to chromatic barium. So for that, we're going to need some of the barium that we just made, and then we're going to fill this up with chromium to get chromium ingots. And since we're batch crafting right now, we're just going to do a full stack. So we're going to do a stack of chromium and a stack of barium to get chromium barium compound. Oh, nice. And we do get extra stuff as a reward. I'm going to take the barium here. And for these next few quests, I've gone ahead and just added a storage crate because we got a lot of compounds that we need to break down into their components. Next up, we're going to need to process some arsenic through our multi-block. That'll give us arsenic ingots. We'll also want strontium, cadmium, and lastly, antimony. And there's 2 more alloys we're going to want to make. The first one's going to need strontium and antimony, and the second one's going to need arsenic and cadmium. And I'm going to hold off on claiming those rewards for now. And we're going to move on to the next quest, which is going to need the chemical combiner and the slot filler. The slot filler's easy, and I'm pretty sure these are consumed in the operations. So we're just going to make... Oh. Okay, they don't stack. We're going to make 2. And the chemical combiner, we're going to set a recipe for into our advanced crafting table. Oh, here it is, our chemical combiner. Requires 100,000 FE per tick. That's a bit ridiculous. This is kind of a whack reward for everything I went through to get this, but okay. All right, I believe that opened up this quest line here. I think for right now, I'm going to put this here, but I'm sure pretty soon we're going to start doing some of the stuff on demand because it's just becoming a lot. All right, so now we have a chain of crafting recipes. It's going to go ethane, which is methane plus carbon and 2 hydrogen. And I believe all of these use 1 carbon and 2 hydrogen. Then the previous one goes in all the way up to hexane. So let's just batch up a whole stack of this stuff. Oh yeah, and the slot fillers are consumed. So I figured out what these things are for. It's whenever we go to put on-demand recipes for this, you can use this to fill in the extra slots to make sure it doesn't get filled in with anything else. And the only issue I see with this is it does get consumed. So whenever it does a craft, which means we just have to craft a bunch of them. But as long as all of the recipes are this basic, we shouldn't need to do that. I'm also not sure that we need a whole stack of this stuff. So once this first one gets done, I'm just going to do 1 at a time until we complete the quest. If this machine was faster though, I would definitely go for a whole stack. All right, I think before we finish going up this way, because what this quest is used for is this. So I think before we finish going up this way, we're going to take out these 3. So first we're going to want to go to our dissolver, process some bottled hellfire. From that we were looking to pick up cucurbitacin, something like that. The next one says to do flying ointment, which we've already done, for magnesium sulfate. And it also wants us to break down some will crystals for magnesium oxide. Well, we got tons of these at this point. And the last one wants us to do Mirian. And from that, we're looking to pick up cobalt aluminate. And I'm really struggling with these names. All right, and that opens up the ability for us to make each of these different gems. Okay, so we make the rubies from strontium carbonate. Yeah, strontium carbonate, cucurbitacin, and beta carotene. Then we make the peridot from magnesium oxide, magnesium sulfate, and hexane. And lastly, we make the sapphire from cobalt aluminate, potassium permanganate, and aluminum oxide. Next in our chemical combiner, we're going to want a 1:4 ratio of Han purple to calcium carbonate, and that's going to give us Han calcite. Then in our chemical dissolver, we're going to process some alchemical brass, and when it pops up here, I'll show you what we're looking for. Well, maybe it's not going to pop up. Either way, we're looking for zinc oxide, and we're going to combine these 2:1 to get beryl zincite. And we're going to break this beryl zincite down for two different things: beryllium alumide and silicon trioxide. Oh nice, and we actually get 16 beryllium ingots as a reward from that one. We're also going to want to break down Han calcite for two different things: barium calcite and copper carbonate. Then we're going to want to break down some stone ichor for tungsten. Nice. We just knocked out a bunch of quests. So following that, the only thing we're missing to unlock this quest, which will be leading us over to this one, which looks like another multi-block, is the liquefier. So we'll also set up a recipe for this one to go to the advanced crafting table. Oh, all of our ingredients just showed up. Let's see if we can craft this thing. The liquefier. Oh, and we get 20 barium ingots as a reward. That's nice. So that opens up barium circuitry quest. And it looks like for this, we're going to need to make another liquid crafter. So let me put that together real quick. All right. We've got our extra liquid crafter added in here. And you'll notice that there's a new building here. This is actually going to be the room where we do our alchemistry stuff. So I've gone ahead and moved over our multi-block. Some of our other stuff is still sitting over here, but that's easy enough to move over. And then we're going to repurpose this room to be for chapter, 27, RFTools Dimensions. That'll just give us a little bit of extra space to work with as we get through this alchemistry stuff and start having to automate some of it. So now it's time to actually make the fluids we plan to send into here. We are, of course, going to need to give this thing some power. And then to start off with, we're going to throw some tungsten in here to melt it down into molten tungsten. Oh, and we have a much bigger issue now. We're completely out of glass. I don't know where it's all going, but this material stonework factory is not enough. And I don't really want to end up burning through our entire buffer of sand making glass, but thankfully there is a sand recipe with dirt and fire essence. So we'll add a sequential fabricator to craft it and a smelting factory to smelt it down into glass. And while that is much better, it still doesn't seem to be good enough. But maybe we just have a backlog to fill. I'll come back and check on this in a little bit. But for now, at least, I was able to request up the 4 ender tanks that we're going to need. So for the tungsten, we're going to use cyan, black cyan, and we're going to want to make sure we filter only tungsten into this. Then we can send that into one of the fluid inputs of the multi-block. And for the second fluid input, we're going to melt down nitrogen into nitrogen gas, and we'll send that one through a pink, red, pink ender tank. And I'm just going to buffer up a good amount of the stuff in this crate right here, and that'll fill this up slowly while we figure out our input items. And actually, most of this stuff we already have in the ME system. So if we just make a recipe, then we can add that to an interface on the input, and we should now be able to request at least one of these oxygen rich. Yeah, let's test it out. All right, all the input items are in. Status, not enough energy. Oh, I never hooked up power from the back. Looks like our first oxygen rich barium calcite perpetuator is actually finished. Man, that's a hard thing to say. 24 silicon trioxide, I'll take that. And now it looks like we're blocked off by these two quests. But we can get bismuth by melting down some demonic elixir. Oh nice, we get 64 demon hearts as a reward. Don't think we have those automated yet. And for the corrupted dragon token, we'll just set a recipe and let the system tell us what we're missing. Oh, we're actually not missing anything, nice. We can also set a recipe for this copper bismuth carbonate sheet. Are we missing anything for this one? We're missing bismuth ingots. Well, at this point, I'm led to assume that'll come from processing bismuth through our multiblock. Oh yeah, there's our bismuth ingots. And can we request one of these now? Sure can. Oh, and I almost forgot, for our corrupted dragon token, we actually need to craft the corrupted core manually. Now we got it. 8 cadmium, I'll take it. And now we have access to the fission controller, fission core, and fission casing. But these items are not cheap, so we're going to set some recipes and let the system tell us what we're missing. And if it's real bad, we're probably just going to end up adding on-demand crafts for a lot of this stuff. So let's see, what do we lack making the fission controller? 7 compound, 8 copper carbonate, 6 chromium barium compound, 3 sapphires, 8 paradots, an everfull iron, a chaos shard, and a crystal core. I think I'm going to start off by batching up 2 stacks of endervors. Then we can turn those into half a stack of unending bowls, and then process them through our thaumatorium into everfull urns. Hopefully 32 will last us the rest of the pack, but we can't be too sure about that. Then I want to go ahead and batch up a bunch of tiny chaos fragments. And I think we're going to go ahead and snag both of these so that we can start setting up on-demand recipes for them. And all 3 of these will have interfaces facing into the back, and we can extract out the bottom of them and back into one of the interfaces. And our chaos shard fusion crafter's also going to need an interface on the input with extract from the output. Oh yeah, and the chemical caster. So now it's just a matter of setting recipes. We're going to need all of the crafting recipes for the chaos shards from the tiny ones. We'll also need a chemical dissolver recipe from titanium boxes to titanium oxide, and we're going to leave the regular titanium out of this. We're going to need a chemical dissolver recipe for void metal into mesquite, and we're going to want to reduce this down because it's only a 50% chance. So instead of 36, I think we'll set it at 8. Seems like a good place to start. Then every step before this, I think we're going to want fully automated. So that's going to be the liquid iodine, which means we're going to need to automate nickel chloride. And that comes from beam cores. And we're also going to want to automate copper chloride, mercury, and iodine. For copper chloride, we'll do crystalline alloy. For mercury, we're going to recycle the mercury output through an atomizer. So we're going to need to make one of those. And for iodine, we're going to need a 2-step chemical dissolver process with evil infused iron. So let's count it up real quick. We're going to need 1, 2, 3, 4 chemical dissolvers. Can we request those? We're missing crystal cores, but that's it. But that's easy enough so long as we have the appropriate rock crystals. Now we should be able to request all 4 of these. We can. We'll also need to set up a recipe for the atomizer. And this one's going to go into the regular advanced crafting table. Can we request one of these? No. What are we missing? Offensive cores and a crystal core. Well, we have offensive cores passive, but we're out of damage reagents. And we're out of damage reagents because the wrong potion got put in here. Okay, and that's because we don't have any of this potion. I'm assuming that's because our fluid transposer broke. And this isn't even the right one, but that fluid transposer's broke too. And the crystal core is also easy to craft. So now we should be able to request our atomizer. We got to wait for the offensive cores to build back up. Great. Now we can request it. Oh, and all of our items have showed up, so we can now make the atomizer. And we'll set up the atomizer last. First, we can set up the automation of these 4 chemical dissolvers. So we're going to want a drawer controller and some drawers for the output. And rather than having, I don't know, 4 different power cells to be able to power these, we're just going to connect them up with some integrated dynamics. And we can use some frame trap doors to hide these cables since the facades actually cause issues. Oh, that's a little nasty, but I guess we're just going to have to deal with it. So now we're going to need to stock crystalline alloy blocks, evil infused iron blocks, evil infused iron, beam cores, which we don't actually have automated yet, and that's it. We'll set each of these to 4, the same as the conduit's extract, and we'll send one of those into each of the bottom 3. Okay, so we're not getting the beam cores yet, but those are pretty simple. We're going to go ahead and go up to the crystalline alloy, That's giving us copper chloride and potassium cyanide. The copper chloride drawer, we're actually going to want to downgrade to just a stack. And the potassium cyanide, we're going to give a void upgrade to and max upgrade it. From the evil infused iron, we're getting lead iodide, iron, and iron oxide. These are going to work the same way. The lead iodide is the one we want, so we're going to downgrade it to a stack. And the other two, we're going to give void upgrades and then max upgrade them. Then we can extract the lead iodide out of this drawer and send that into the top one where we're going to get lead and iodine. It's the same situation. Lead's the one we want, so we'll downgrade it, and the other one will get a void and max upgrades. And then we can set all of these to extract out, except for the bottom one, because we don't have that one finished filtering into the drawers, and we're going to have them insert into the drawer controller. And we're just going to have to come back for these beam cores because we're still filling our buffers on offensive cores, so we're not going to be able to automate those just yet. So if you remember, our first recipe for this liquid crafters needs iodine, mercury, and copper chloride. Both of these we just automated, and the mercury is where our atomizer comes into play. So instead of a black hole tank here, we can use a regular portable tank because all of this is actually going to be processed through the atomizer anyway. So yeah, then we'll want to extract out of this tank into our atomizer. And this thing's also going to need an energy exporter for power. And that's going to have our mercury over here ready for us. So all we need to do now is bring over a cable, connect up an interface, and we're going to stock this with iodine and copper chloride. And then we can use an item conduit from both of these sources to limited item filter into the input the items that we need, which will cause the machine to start processing. And that's going to give us our two different fluids, the one that's going to be recycled and the one that's sent to the next machine. And it also gives us pulverized copper, which we are just going to extract out and send to a trash can. And for our beam cores, we're still waiting on our offensive cores to back up, but there's a few other things we can take care of while we wait on that. So first we're going to need to craft up another blood orb, and we can put this into our crafter tier 3 along with reduction cores, reductus, and well, actually the reduction core is going to be the output. Empty cores, reductus, and elasticity reagents. Now we have the reduction cores on passive. Then we're going to need to connect up 2 new interfaces along with 2 level emitters to our auto infusion matrix that we're using for passive items. And then we'll add the recipes to the limited item filter, which allows us to passive permutatio and mortis. So now we have all of the input ingredients on passive, and we're going to need another crafting core. So we're going to need for this one 5 pedestals, one of which we're going to turn into the crafting core. And just like our other setup, we're going to need item conduits from the bottom for our inputs and outputs. We'll also need a power cell down here for power. And I think we'll actually pull the items out of some of these interfaces over here. Then once we get all the items filtered in, we'll automatically be making beam cores in here. And we'll just need to filter the extract out and into a drawer, which we'll downgrade. Now our setup for beam cores is complete. And we are actually crafting a few, but offensive cores are still our bottleneck for now. So now we should be getting beam cores in here, which gives us polyvinyl chloride and nickel chloride. And the nickel is the one we want. And now that we have that, we can set up another interface for this next fluid crafter. And we'll need to stock up nickel chloride and limited item filter it to 16 in this input. So now this one should start processing, and it should give us our iodine, which will automatically be sent over to this next one, leaving us needing to set a recipe for 2 mesquite and 1 titanium to 12 tiny chaos fragments. And when we put this into this interface, our chaos shard on demand / passive automation is complete. And let's just test it out by requesting 1. There is 360 right now, and now there's 372. And since we have a drawer controller over here now, I'm going to go ahead and remove these and replace them with trim. That way we can access our mineral salts from AE2 as well. Next, I think we'll set up these compounds and ingots that we need. So chromium and barium will need to go to an alloy smelter, as well as strontium and antimony. And that leaves us with 6 ingots. So we're going to need to set up chemical caster recipes for these. Once we set those up, that leaves us with 6 different elements that we need to have automation recipes for. And actually, we may not do automation recipes for these. This may be something that we just handcraft for now, solely because once we get fission, some of these are going to become easier. I'm not sure which ones, because, I mean, there's just so many of these different things, but let's try to request our controller now and see what it tells us we're missing. It says we're missing chromium. We set up a recipe for that though, so it should tell us that. I just never connected up the interface. Okay, well that's an easy fix. One thing that we're missing that there's no reason we should be is pulsating crystals. And that's because of pulsating iron. We should be able to solve that just by adding it to an interface if any of these have extra slots. And of course, none of these have extra slots. And we do not have extra channels here either. So we're going to do something kind of jank. We're actually going to add pulsating iron to this interface and extract it out into an ender chest that we're going to set to green, green, green. And the reason I chose this spot is because we actually only have, well now we only have one, but we had 2 channels on this line that were just never going to get used. So might as well make use of them. And then this ender chest will output to the room where we need the pulsating iron, essentially acting as like a long range interface. Now we're backing up on pulsating crystals again. Let's see, what else are we missing? All right, so we're also missing paradox and sapphires. That we can just set up a chemical combiner recipe. And I'm hoping that as long as this thing's on blocking mode, it'll be able to craft these things without a hitch. So let's see if we can request, actually we're gonna need to do more than one just to make sure this works properly. So it puts the recipe in, it crafted it, put the next recipe in, crafted it. Perfect. So now we're to a point where we're just missing a few compounds and elements. And of those, I think the only ones we're going to set up recipes for is hexane and all the ones that come before that. And I just want to make sure this works where we have like different recipes. So let's go ahead and request up a couple of hexane to make sure this works. Puts the recipe in, crafts it, goes back into the system, puts the next recipe in, crafts it. All right, yeah, we should be good with this. I think I am going to go ahead and add this storage crate back here so we can batch craft the rest of them. Actually, I am going to add a few recipes so that we can get the copper carbonate. So we're going to go from the chemical dissolver Han calcite to copper carbonate. Then the Han calcite is going to be Han purple and calcium carbonate in the chemical combiner. And I think that's as far back as we're going to take it. So now the only thing I need to batch craft is a bunch of barium and a bunch of strontium. Now, fingers crossed, we should be able to request our fission controller. We can. Oh, all the items just showed up. Let's go ahead and craft this thing down. Now to go along with our fission controller, we also need 3 fission cores. And it looks like we're missing some more stuff for that. Okay, well, the dragon token is easy. We need to set a recipe for that. One for triple compressed cobble, and a sawmill recipe for slice of dragon egg. And the rest of this stuff we can easily batch up in our chemical dissolver. And now we can request our 3 fission cores. Now all of our items have just showed up. So let's go ahead and craft these down into the fission cores. And the last thing we're going to need is 98 fission casings, which means we're missing barium and chromium. So let's batch those up real quick. And now we have everything we need to request our 98 fission casings. Oh man, this feels so good. It's going to make a lot of these different compounds and things easier to make. So let's go ahead and get this thing together. It's going to be a 5x5x5 of casings with a hollow center outside of the 3 fission cores. And then the fission controller goes right here on the front. And the multi-block should now be complete. Okay. It's actually been about a week since the last clip, but we got our fission reactor down, and that has opened up quite a few quests for us. So we're going to work on getting these things knocked out, but before we do that, we're going to need to give this thing a little bit of power. And up here in the top left, you can see it requires 250,000 FE per tick. So that's what we're going to set our energy exporter to. On top of that, we're probably also at a point to where we can start setting these things up for on demand, since the fusion is about as good as it's going to get. And in order to pull the items back out of here, we're probably just going to use conduits. That's going to be our best bet. but we're running on limited space to actually make this happen. So I think we're going to use a phantom face with a conduit extracting into it, and we're going to link this thing to our interface over here. So now it's just a matter of setting up recipes, and I've gone ahead and pinned all of the quests up here. So we're going to set up recipes for whatever the easiest of these options is. So for the zirconium and yttrium, these are both a quest, and we can get both of them from gold, so that's what we're going to do. And I'm just going to go through the list here and go ahead and make all these recipes and get them requested, so we should complete a bunch of quests here. Alright, we got all the quests done, and guess what that did? It opened up even more quests for us. So I guess let's start at the top and work our way down. We have Zikitrid beryllium alumide, made in the chemical combiner. So let's set a recipe for that one and request. Our next recipe is going to come from niobium, and we're looking to get scandium. So we'll set that recipe for the fission reactor. We're also going to want a fission reactor recipe for rubidium to break down into argon, and that'll be the last of our elements over here. So we can go ahead and get both of those requested up. Actually, I'll take that back. We have one more element, mendelevium, over here in this VMB compound quest. Conveniently enough, though, we have a lot of mendelevium from the nether stars we broke down, and the VMB compound we're going to need an alloy smelter recipe for, as well as a chemical combiner recipe for the boron ingots, the mendelevium ingots, and the vanadium ingots. So let's see if we can request our first compound now. Looks like we can. Now, the next ingot we're going to want to make is rubidium and rubies, and we're going to make these for the alloy smelter as well. And we will also need recipes for rubidium ingots and rubies. And the rubies got to be made in the chemical combiner with these compounds. I'm not sure if we have these, so let's just put it in the system and find out. Let's see, do we have everything we need? No, we're missing 2 beta carotene. I bet you that comes from carrots, which we don't have automated, but we do have 2000 in the system. And let's see, is there a chemical dissolver recipe for beta carotene? There sure is. But you can also get them from spider eyes, which we do have automated, and it's 100% chance as opposed to 20. So let's set that recipe instead. Now we should be able to request our ruby rubidium. All right, that's 2 more quests down. We got 3 more to go before we unlock anything else. But before we do that, I'm just going to come through here and claim all of our rewards. Nothing too crazy, but getting these otherworldly tiers is very nice. Next up, we could work on any of these 3, but I think we're going to save this one until later. It's a little complicated, and we're going to go to the fission coolant unit. So we need a recipe for neon lights, as well as the structural glass used to make that, and an alloy smelter recipe for cadmium arsenic compound, and 2 chemical caster recipes, one for arsenic ingots and the other one for cadmium ingots. And that should be everything to make our fission coolant units. And we get 64 cadmium ingots as a reward from that one. Well, that leaves us with 2 more quests. Let's check out this goddess pearl. Magnesium, molybdenum, and primordial pearls. But to be honest, I'm not sure that we need that. We have 270 primordial fragments currently, and a lot more pearls to work off of. So I guess it is time to get into this Zyke back sheet and just take a second to look at how crazy this recipe is. And I'm not sure how many of these things we're going to need in the future. Doesn't look like we're going to need too crazy of an amount, but I have said that and been wrong before. So for now, we're going to set up on-demand recipes, and if we need to change it later, we can. Do also need to make sure we have an extra liquid crafter we can do it in. And of course, all of the ones that we have are already in use. So time to bin some more recipes and start requesting. All right, we got another liquid crafter built, set up, and ready to go. So to get started with this, we're going to need helium gas and argon gas, both of which are going to come from the liquefier, just like our nitrogen and tungsten was before. So we're going to do the exact same thing pretty much. We're going to set up 2 ender tanks, each of which is going to get its own color code. So for the argon gas, we're going to use triple light blue. And for the helium gas, we're going to use, if I can get in here, red, orange, orange. Then we need to set up our fluid conduits with filters to only put that gas in there. And then we'll set the output tanks directly under the inputs of this new liquid crafter. That way, when we throw helium and argon into the liquefier, it'll automatically be sent over there. So with the fluids handled, we need to make sure we have all the input items handled. We can go ahead and create this recipe though. And then we have zircitrid, beryllium alumide already, and we have scandium already. We just need to set up a chemical caster recipe for scandium ingots. So now if we go ahead and bring our cable over, set up our interface with our pattern and a couple of conduits to extract back into the system, we should be able to request a Zyke back sheet. So let's give it a go. Oh, and I was just looking down at my phone, so I didn't even see when it got put in, but our Zyke back sheet's finished up. Okay, let's open our quest book back up now, and we have access to, once again, another multiblock. This one is the weak fusion plant. So I'm going to go ahead and get all of these things pinned. And of this stuff, what are we missing recipes for? We're missing machine circuitry. That looks kind of expensive, but we're going to give it a go. So we'll set up a recipe for that one. And we also need the machine gearbox, which we don't have titanium gears, but we can set a recipe for that one as well. And we also don't have the ultimate energy input hatch. So I'm going to start off and go ahead and request up, each of these things that we can easily make and we've made a lot of before, because I'm assuming that some of these other things may cause us some issues. Like this one, we still need the chemical caster recipe for molybdenum ingots, if I pronounce that right. So that recipe now in, we should be able to request 4 of those and craft our machine blueprint. We're also going to need to request 1 ultimate energy input, which we're missing cucurbitacin and awakened draconium. So for the awakened draconium, we just need to set up a recipe to turn awakened draconium blocks into ingots, and that should solve that. And for the cucurbitacin, we can either set up a recipe for bottled hellfire in the chemical dissolver, or we can do carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen in the chemical combiner. Now, right off the bat, this seems like the easier option because we have a bunch of these. But in order to actually set this recipe up properly, we're going to need to fill in all of these extra slots with slot fillers. That way the items actually get placed in the right spot. And we'll also need to teach the system how to make these slot fillers from carbon. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this pattern in here. And if we try to just request 1 of these to start off with, it's going to show the slot fillers. If we press start, everything should get put in there and it crafted. Perfect. So now if we try to request our ultimate, what are we missing? Lightning charges, that's easy to solve. We just need to batch up some more of those. And everything else we already had, so we should be able to request this now. Oh, and while we're waiting, we can go ahead and claim this quest, which gives us 32 buckets of helium gas. So we just need to figure out which one of these tanks is for helium, put the tank down and set it to push, and we will have a lot more helium gas in the system. All right, we need to manually craft up the corrupted cores for this ultimate. And now it's just a matter of waiting on these last few crafts, which the chemical combiner seems to be our bottleneck, but I'm okay with that. And here, any second now, we should see our ultimate energy input hatch show up. So next up, we need machine gearboxes. So next up, we need 8 machine gearboxes. We're missing silver, and that's it. Well, we have unlimited silver. So let's set up a chemical dissolver recipe to turn 1 block of silver into 144 element silver. if that's what you want to call it. Oh, and we can actually now request this, except we have no CPUs available because we're using 144,000 bytes. And right now we only have 128K worth of crafting storage on here, but we can go all the way up to 16,384Ks. I don't know if we want to go that high though. Maybe some of these 256s will be good. You know, 4 of these 256s will be able to get us into the millions pretty easily. But at that point, why not just upgrade to the higher tier when it only needs condensed on top of that? Yeah, let's see if we can get up to the 1024K. So we're going to need to set quite a few recipes in here. Actually, only 4 recipes, surprisingly enough. Now the real question is, can we request 2 of these things? We can. And honestly, it's not even that expensive. 2,730 logic processors. At that point, we might as well go ahead and go up to the 4,096. Can we request 2 of these? We don't have a CPU big enough to craft them. Okay, what about just 1? Yeah, we can request 2 of them and just do them 1 at a time. 5,000 logic processors though is pretty crazy. But we have 21,000 in the system, so it's not going to be a problem. Alright, both of our CPUs are upgraded, and we can craft our gearboxes. Alright, so there's one more thing we need, and that is going to be 13 of this machine circuitry. And we're missing quite a few things for this, so we can start setting up some recipes. One of the things we're missing is calcium carbonate, and we get a 50% chance of getting 9 from a block of meteoric iron. So we're going to want to reduce that down. Let's just say 1 meteoric iron block gives you 2. That should be good enough to account for that 50% chance. We're also missing beryllium alumide, and we can get that from zircitrid beryllium alumide or from beryl zincsite. And since we just set up zircitrid and there's no difference in how much we get, we might as well use that one. And the last thing that we're missing is bismuth, which comes from demonic elixir. And we have a 50% chance of getting 256 or a 50% chance of getting 128. So if we just set it up as we're only getting 128, that'll cover the extra cost. Now, a couple other things that we're missing in order to be able to craft this is, well, we're probably not missing helium gas, but all 3 of these other gases used in these 2 liquid crafters we're not going to have enough. So I'm also going to set up this liquefier with its own crate, and we're going to put this on a different extract channel. Actually, we can use brown, not green, brown. And we can just load this crate up with all of the various elements that we need more of the gas. It also appears to me that we have a recipe conflict with zircitrid. If you see, it says we're missing 68, but we have 100 to craft. I'm assuming that's because we're using zirconium to make it, and we're also kitting the zirconium to make it from breaking it down. Oh, so it's not the zirconium or the yttrium, it's the beryllium alumide. We're making our beryllium alumide from the zircitrid, so that's what's causing the problem. So instead of doing that, we need to make our beryllium alumide from beryl zincsite, and the beryl zincsite is going to come from zinc oxide and beryl in the combiner. We can get that zinc oxide from alchemical brass blocks at a 40% chance for 36. So instead of 36, I'm just going to tell the system that we can only get 10 from that. And the beryl comes from Mirian at a 50% chance, because we got 2 sections of 25 to get 72. So if we have 50% chance to get 72, then let's just set it as 36. Actually, we'll be a little more conservative, and we're going to set it at 20, which did fix our issue. Perfect. Another issue I've noticed while I was waiting on those items to backlog is we don't have any more Venus volcanic rock. And once we get our next tier of mystical agriculture, we can automate this. But for right now, I think we're going to need to go back to Venus, which I think was this teleporter, and flip our quarry around to the other side. Oh, no. We don't need to flip the quarry. It's only on chunk 60, so no wonder we don't have it. For some reason, we're not getting power. Or enough power? That's what it says. But it's maxed out on power, so I don't understand what the problem is here. Well, I just reset it, so it's going to have to run through all 60 of those chunks again before it gets back to where it was. And maybe that'll fix it, maybe it won't. Maybe we will have our seeds by then. I don't know. Oh man, this really is quite the craft. I have been gone for maybe 30 minutes. Went and got some dinner and come back, and we still have 5,000 something of each of these to craft. Thankfully, they're crafting at the same time. This fission controller just isn't fast enough. But there's not really much else for me to do while I wait, so I think I'm just going to start cleaning up some of these underground areas of the base. It really didn't even take all that long to finish up. I want to say it was only about 10 more minutes, which I wasn't able to get too much done underground, but let's get this thing built right here. Oh, we got our weak fusion plant. So let's see what we can use this thing for. We got some late game items. We have all of our tier 6 seeds, but we're not going to be able to do that until we get into RFTools Dimensions. And then we have a few different elements and things of that nature, which I'm assuming, let's go ahead and claim that, is what these quests are going to be. Yeah, so back to setting recipes. First, we're going to need uranium, which is antimony and niobium with a fission coolant unit. And look at that. 12 million Fe per tick. That's pretty crazy. Okay, so we're going to get that recipe. And we're going to need a couple more recipes to automate the antimony that's put into it. So we're going to need one for instill to antimony trioxide. It's a 50%, so let's just take it down to probably 40. Then we'll set up a recipe for that to go back into the chemical dissolver and give us antimony. We'll remove the oxygen from that one. And the niobium we already have automated. The other quest available to us right now is ytterbium made from rubidium and arsenic. So we'll set that recipe. We already have rubidium, and based on the fact that we have exactly 2048 arsenic, I'm going to assume that that's one of the ones that we already have on passive. So let's go ahead and put our 2 chemical dissolver recipes in here. And then we're going to need to work on setting this thing up, because right now we have it, but it can't do anything. And considering where the inputs and outputs are on this thing, I think we're just going to pop down below. Oh, hello, Mr. Baby Zombie. And we're actually going to use phantom faces and a phantom energy face to connect up to this thing. So I've basically placed them in exactly the same spot below as they are above. So I just need to link these up real quick. Then we'll have a conduit line running from this one to a interface that's going to go on this one. And we'll set up our energy exporter to this phantom energy face. And the ultimate energy input hatch accepts 16,777,216. And we just need a little bit of conduit to hook this up. And we can place our 2 patterns inside, which should allow us to request our uranium and our ytterbium. So let's go ahead and claim the rewards from these real quick. And we'll move on to palladium and bromine. And both of these use the elements that we just made in the fission multiblock. So let's go ahead and set these patterns. And now we're looking at radium and plutonium. And so now we're going back to 2 more recipes made in the fusion plant. The plutonium is made with palladium and cadmium. And we just set up the recipe for palladium. Do we have cadmium already? We don't. So we can get cadmium from cadmium sulfide from flying ointment. And for the radium, we need palladium, which we just set up, and then molybdenum, which I believe we set up earlier. So we can just pull out this one recipe. We get some uranium ingots, which surprisingly enough, we don't have any of yet because, well, these are really replaced by, oh, we can get uranium seeds. Anyway, these are really replaced by yellorium, so I guess these don't spawn naturally in this pack. But let's see. That opens up this one for ruthenium, which once again comes from the radium that we just made in the fission multiblock. Alright, then that opens up thorium, which is another weak fusion plant recipe. So we'll get that, and palladium and ruthenium we already have, so we're good to go on that one. Okay, that leads us to rhodium, which is going to take us back to fission with thorium. So we'll set a recipe for that one. Alright, and that leads us into the very last quest of the chapter. Highly radioactive dimension splitting compound. And this is once again another liquicrafter recipe. So we're going to need to extend our room out one more time. Add another liquicrafter, which actually needs a huge energy input hatch over the big one. And then we need to set up the recipes to do these on demand. Highly radioactive dimension splitting compound needs plutonium and rhodium ingots. Both of these elements we just set up, so we need to set chemical caster recipes for each of those to turn into ingots. Then we need to set up our interface so that we can get our recipe in here. And I just need to bring over a little bit of conduit. I said conduit, I meant ME cable. Either way, we got it hooked up now. And the only thing left to figure out is our 2 fluids. So we need bromine and uranium, both of which we're going to set up the same way. So we're going to need 4 ender tanks total. The uranium ones, we're going to go 2 lime dye on the outside and then a cactus green on the middle. And for the bromine, we're going to go red, orange, brown. Then we just need to make sure we filter these so they only get the type of fluid that we want in there. Hook up our input tanks and drop a decent amount of each of these into our chemical dissolver. Liquefier? Yeah, liquefier. Oh yeah, and we can't forget to set our output conduit. With that, we should now be good to request our first highly radioactive dimension splitting compound. Status: not enough energy. Oh, this thing requires 200,000. I thought that was 20,000. So we actually need another ultimate energy input for this thing. And we are missing strontium carbonate, which is one of those things that normally comes from our impetus items. But now that we're getting strontium from osmium, we should be able to do this in the chemical combiner. It's just going to be a little bit slower, but we can deal with that. And now we should be able to request this. Yes. It's going to take a little while though. Oh, it just finished up. So as soon as we plug this in, I've already changed the energy value on there. It should start processing, and our highly radioactive dimension splitting compound has showed up. Oh, we got to get this out of our inventory quick. And that actually finishes off chapter 26 for us. And we get 2 corrupted dragon tokens as a reward. And now we have access to RFTools Dimensions. So I think this is where we're going to end this episode for today. We got a lot done, made it all the way through the alchemistry chapter, unlocked RFTools Dimension, leading us even closer to finishing out this pack. So I thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. And if you did, make sure to drop down and leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll catch you in the next one.